This is The Poet and the Poem from the Library of Congress. I'm Grace Cavalieri, and today we have two poets with new books who are vastly different from each other, and they're both terrific. Jim Daniels is a storyteller with a narrative. Alan Britt is a surreal imagist, and you'll hear them now. Jim, give us a poem.
Thank you, Grace. So I'm going to read a poem called American Dream, which was the original title for my new book of poems, which is now called Late Invocation for Magic, New and Selected Poems. But the publisher said, well, if somebody's looking for your book and it's called American Dream, your book isn't going to be the first thing that pops up. So they made me change it. So, but this was supposed to be the title poem. American Dream. It has up a graph. Some of the jobs these machines replaced were difficult, boring, or dangerous. Others were good jobs that paid well and workers enjoyed. This was a sign on a robotics exhibit in the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. American Dream. My father, my children, my wife, and I were recruited to work on a toy car assembly line. My son placed the yellow plastic frame onto the conveyor. My wife snapped the red body onto the frame. My father snapped the blue seats in. I pushed the front end on. My daughter cranked the conveyor, controlling the speed. We each had a small box of parts. The museum employee in her perky red vest started a Chaplin-esque soundtrack, and we began, working smoothly till she instructed my daughter to crank faster, and we got backed up, tossing half-formed cars to the side. Faster, she kept telling her. We ran out of parts just as the music stopped. The employee counted good cars and bad. Bad outnumbered good. My son asked if we could keep the cars. She said no. In fact, we had to take them apart so that others could put them together again. My father and I had worked on assembly lines where if you couldn't keep up, you were fired. Where time controllers assessed how long each job should take and set the line speed. The family that took our places asked me to videotape the whole thing. I wish I could say I was making this up. Inside, I felt the old humiliation throbbing again in my stooped back. I told this woman bossing my daughter around I wanted to see my union rub. As a kind of joke, but not. But she had a script to stick to and was probably making a minimum wage herself. She didn't explain to us what we were supposed to take away from our experience, just not the cars.
Jim, quintessential poetry from Jim Daniels from his new book we'll talk about in a minute. Now, Alan Britt is going to open us up with his poem.
Jim, my wife is from Lincoln Park, Michigan. We know a little bit about Dearborn, Buddy's Pizza, etc. We spent a lot of time in that area.
Let's have a poem, Ellen.
All right, here we go. So this one is called Around Midnight. And by the way, all poems that I read are from my latest book, Renaming the Universe, which is basically based upon observing the universe, becoming inspired by my observations, and then I guess the renaming part would be the poetry. Around midnight. Beneath the surf of a street lamp, a rabbit bobs, dipping below wave upon wave of blue-white light. Neither cicadas nor a child demanding more time on the internet influences the rabbit's diminutive migration. But across the yard, a single match might as well be sunrise as it freezes the rabbit into a black semicolon, overflowing mercury grass. Stars are crushed so deep into the sky tonight, they create leaks 200 billion light years away.
And I asked for another short one from you.
And here's a short one called White Dog. Beneath a distant streetlight, a white dog spots me, but the old man clomping drags him away on a leather leash. Through foggy lamplight, The dog's charcoal eyes leave white ashes.
Alan, what do you think you've done in writing this book? What's it about?
Well, it's, as I mentioned, it's really gets back to me paying attention to things around me, objects, people, nature in particular, I would say, and becoming inspired by those objects, those things, and then finding the words that are some interesting in some way, intriguing, to capture that experience. And I really, I just got to be imaginative to stimulate my sensibilities. So,
Well said. And the title of the book again is
renaming the universe.
Mhm. And so you have lived a life, Jim, of storytelling. And what do you think you're saying in this new book? Because we're all telling the same story again and again in our lives, as you know. What is the same story that you're telling a new way?
Uh, well, you always hope it's a new way, but uh, some of my obsessions keep coming back in this book. So one of the ways I arranged the book was not chronologically, but more by subject matter. So I mix in each section poems from different books that play off each other, which touches on that idea of the obsessions. When I was going through all the different books to select poems, I kept noticing that there are certain subjects I came back to. So for me, it's Detroit, the Detroit area, particularly working class material. And I have generations of my family that worked in the car plants there. And so I've been interested in kind of telling their stories that I don't think always show up so much in poetry. And just city life. I think the urban landscape is my landscape. So most of my poems, whether it be Pittsburgh, where I live now, or Detroit, the Detroit area where I grew up, those are the locations and settings for a lot of my work.
And an American icon. If we could put both of your poems in a cornerstone for 3,000 years, they would really know what life was like. Let's have more poetry. That's our business here. And we'll have a poem now from Jim.
Okay. So this is the first poem in the collection, and so it's kind of an introductory poem. I hope that sort of plays off what I was just talking about in terms of my obsessions. So it's called Turning Down the Ars Poetica, Eating Up the Leftovers. Somewhere a man arrives home from work in streetlight darkness, car door etching itself on the street's silence. Inside, leftovers on the stove. A woman in her robe prepares his plate. 5 children asleep, radio tuned to talk on health and home improvements and religion, though it's just soft static now as she sits down to watch him eat, as he sits down to hear what he missed.
Mm.
I can't tell you whether they even hug or kiss before collapsing in bed together, for I am already in dream's tender arms. And if this violates point of view or logic, she'll get you a plate and explain it all to you, my mother.
Ah,
What a loving portrait. What a cameo of your life. Alan, it's your turn.
okay. So, in keeping with the theme of writing in the middle of the night, this one's called Sharing Wine with Close Friends. At night, slugs emerge, looking for Chardonnay or a dense Merlot, with the streetlight's discarded blouse rippling its surface. The slugs inch their leopard backs, glistening silver trails over moonlit dirt, in patterns alien to Western economics. These slugs, drawn through darkness by the beautiful glass foot of wine standing naked, oozing up her smooth leg, her rounded waist, until they drape muscular tongues over the lip of my trembling glass. When I find them sharing my wine, I'm forced to give pause, and for a moment I become inert as a cicada husk blown upside down by a silk breeze.
I'll tell you, I want ever what you're drinking. You're now you've heard each other, and you've both been professors of poetry for hundreds of years, inspired many students. So, Jim, what you just heard, how would you approach surreal poetry to your class? How would you prep them to open themselves out to the imagined world? How do you do that? You've surely taught surrealism at some point.
Oh, sure. Poetry, the range of poetry is incredible, and I've always tried to teach the entire range and continue to read the entire range, and try to learn from it. With Alan's poems, the imagery is just mind blowing. I just found myself like if I was reading the book, I would be underlining all these wonderful similes and metaphors. That last poem with that streetlight image, oh man, it's just so beautiful. And so, in terms of, uh, you know, I find the poems very painterly, and I think that might be one approach for me in terms of teaching them. Imagining the pictures and the tone and nuance that they create, and the surprise in terms of the comparisons between things that are unlikely and delightful once you start to think about them.
Wow, Alan, aren't you lucky to have such
Yes.
an exegesis on your work? And
Yeah.
so you've heard Jim's deeply moving feelings and stories. How do you tell your students the value of narrative?
Well, in keeping with what Jim said, the variety of poetry is vast. And one of the wonderful aspects of being a teacher of poetry is to bring all of these different voices into my classroom and allowing me to become intimate with their words, which otherwise, it's challenging to do. In narrative poetry, for example, depending upon the length of the poem, um, I have asked students from time to time in longer poems like that to each take a section of the poem and read it out loud, and so that everybody can digest it. You know, now there is a process I use called explication. I learned a long time ago. The wonderful poet Dwayne Locke taught us to do this. You read through the poem a couple of times, get the gist of it, and then you cover the poem up. And then you start from the top and you go work your way line by line all the way down. And I have found that students who have never seen such a poem before, by the time they get to the bottom, they will say, "Wow, I got so much out of that poem that way."
Hmm.
It does
How do you,
it takes
how,
patience.
how do you explain that I always cry when I read Jim Daniels' poems? That you would have to work around in your classroom. You'd have to work that in the agenda. So we're going to hear another one from each of you, and we'll start with Alan. No, we'll start with Jim because I have your bio right here, and I want everyone to know this. Jim Daniels is the recipient of the 25-26 Michigan Author Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Library of Michigan. His new book we're talking about today is Late Invocation for Magic, New and Selected Poems, just published actually. He's authored over 30 collections of poetry, 7 collections of fiction, 4 produced screenplays, I even saw one, and 1 collection of essays. And Ignorance of Trees was published in 25. Don't let a year go by without a book. Recently named a Michigan Notable Book. He's a native of Detroit, lives in Pittsburgh, and teaches at Alma College Low Residency MFA program. And now here's Jim. Give us 2, Jim. Why not?
Okay, so the first one, so it's called, I like to read, it's called American Cheese. As you noted, I've talked for a long time, and this is a poem where I think the two worlds of working class life and academia sort of come together. American cheese. At department parties, I eat cheeses my parents never heard of. Gooey, pale cheeses speaking garbled tongues. I've acquired a taste, yes, and that's okay, I tell myself. I grew up in a house shaded by factory clank and clamor, a house built like a square of 64 American singles, ones my mother made lunches with, for the hungry man who disappeared into that factory and 5 hungry kids. American singles, yellow mustard, day-old Wonder Bread. Not even Swiss with its mysterious holes. We were sparrows and starlings still learning how the blue jay stole our eggs, our nest eggs. 64 singles wrapped in wax. Dig your nails in to separate them. When I come home, I crave more than any home cooking those thin slices in the fridge. I fold one in half, drop it in my mouth. My mother can't understand, doesn't remember me being a cheese eater like that.
And another.
That's fun.
Okay, I am a parent, and I'm going to read a short poem about my children when they were younger, and one of our rituals at bedtime. It's called Talking About the Day. Each night after reading 3 books to my 2 children, we each picked one, to unwind them into dreamland, I'd turn off the light and sit between their beds in the wide junk shop rocker I'd reupholstered blue, still feeling the close reading warmth of their bodies beside me, and ask them to talk about the day. We did this, we did that, sometimes leading somewhere, sometimes not, but always ending up at the happy ending of now. Now, in still darkness, listening to their breath slow and ease into sleep's regular rhythm. Grown now, you might have guessed, the past tense solid, unyielding against the dropped bombs of recent years. But how it calmed us then, rewinding the gentle loop and in the trusting darkness, pressing play.
Jim, you get me every time.
Beautiful.
Alan, we're going to have 2 from Alan also, so we'll get to know a real sense of his voice. And his poems have appeared variously all over America in the best literary magazines: Agni Review, American Poetry Review, Bitter Oleander, Christian Science Monitor, English Journal, Kansas Quarterly. Oh, there's just a lot of them. New Letters, Strand in the UK, and many others. He's published 25 books of poetry and was nominated for the 2021 International Janus Pannonius Prize by the Hungarian Center of Penn. And it was for excellence in poetry from any part of the world. So it was a worldwide competition. The previous recipients were Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Charles Bernstein, those kids. And they both had luminous careers, and I'm just the luckiest person to spend an hour with them. Let's have 2 poems, Alan.
I'll start with one called Upon Stepping into Darkness, We Smelled the Smoke. 2 steps into the silver mist, and we taste the faint odor of wood smoke leaking from a nearby chimney. Smoke settles upon sleeping bones of lamplight, fallen through a split rail fence, shattering the moist grass. 2 more steps into the mist, and our feet vanish. Smoke rises to our knees, waists, jawbones, until all that's left is a voice, a sable voice, a hieroglyphics of insects, golden-eyed frogs, and opaque claws dissecting a cardboard box for bread scraps and empty tin cans. Suddenly, each new step leaves a hole in the infinite.
Golden-eyed frogs. What would we do without you?
I'll read the second one. It's a little bit longer. It's called The Boy Who Lived Among Endive. In a land of plenty, in a land of Disney mythology, in a land of baseball millionaires and canned rock and roll, the young boy lived among endive. Escarole, leeks, cilantro, red onions. Although mostly a vegetable boy, he loved to pretend he was occasionally one orange mandarin slice, relaxing his moist shoulder against others tossed akimbo in casual slumber. In short, he worshipped the artichoke's slender arms, purple claws, and wanted her for his bride. But he was young yet, too naive to fully comprehend Neruda's red potatoes thumping the edge of a boiling sky. One morning he awoke, stretching his right hip and left shoulder from the web of a dream. Still rocking in his cradle of carved ivory, in his ruffled silk gown, in his cradle fashioned from tin mines and offshore oil fields, his cradle fashioned by political kisses and cancer, his cradle delivered by banana boats to remote graves near segregated, decaying asbestos schools in Mississippi, his cradle of treaties where fountain pen ink runs like a wild river, seeking tributaries down the face of Smohala, down the temples of German Jews, down the pink swelled cheekbone of a dark-skinned fourth grade little girl in Baltimore City. He awoke one morning to find his pale green plastic rattle filled with tamarind seeds had been replaced by an M16.
Too true.
Mm.
Too true. I love the political poem, which is gorgeous instead of didactic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jim, your life, what is it worth to live a life of story and truth, finding the truth in the language, the exact words for the language, and the deep feeling to be so vulnerable and to be so open? What is it like to have lived that life? What's the use of it?
Oh, are you asking me or Alan?
Jim,
Okay, sorry.
it's for
Well,
actually, we can both think about it, but Jim, what is it we're doing? That's what I'm asking you. You know, your life has been, how many years have you been writing?
oh, since high school, so that would be
A while.
56 years.
Okay, now
Yeah,
that, and
something
you
like
write every day too. So what are we
pretty
doing?
much, yeah.
What does
Uh,
it mean? What does it mean and what are we doing?
well,
What should we be doing? I'm not sure.
yeah, yeah, it's hard to know what we should be doing, but so I think a lot of us start writing as a kind of personal practice, just in terms of trying to figure out our own lives and our place in it and how we feel about things uh, and sort things out. And then eventually, we think about reaching, poetry. Somebody said a poem is like a hand reaching out, hoping another hand grabs it. And I always like that idea, that kind of human connection to audience. And that's where, the revision process and just an awareness of what somebody else might get out of something that you wrote and trying to make it accessible in that way. So, I started out writing for myself just as a way to try to, figure things out. And then I just kept at it, and then felt like I wanted to connect to other writers and readers through that process. And so, and I continue to do so. I think most people, and I suspect Alan might agree with me in that it's not like we could turn it off. You too, Grace. I mean, we
Yeah.
have to write, and it's It's part of what keeps
Well,
us
we have the
sane.
greatest tool in the box, which is called obsession. So you're really right. We don't have a choice. Read us a final poem, Jim.
Okay, this one connects to what we're talking about, I think, in terms of thinking about what poetry can do or how we put it together. It's called If a Poem is a House. If a poem is a house, and I think it is, are the windows open or closed? If closed, are they broken, air seeping in cracks, tinkling through broken glass? Are there curtains, blinds, heavy wooden shutters? I have the bricks, but not the windows, not the doors. How many doors does a poem have? Front door, a side door, back door, basement door? Are they locked? A question mark is a master key, but what if there's a deadbolt? Are we outside the poem or inside? Do we feel claustrophobic or safe? How safe is too safe? Germs on the door handle, graffiti on the walls? Is the house infested with vermin or roaches, carpenter ants or carpenters? If the house has a pet, does it come when called? Is that a bat up in the attic, and are we okay with that? If a poem is a house, does the mail pile up on the floor? Who knocks on the door? Nobody robs the poetry house, and nobody makes donations. It is just a house where somebody lives, breath by breath. See how the windows fog?
The program has featured Alan Britt and Jim Daniels, and this is The Poet and the Poem from the Library of Congress. And the program is produced by Forest Woods Media Productions, post-production by Mike Turpin, MET Studios. The program is funded by the Sinipit Fund, the Bravada Foundation, Young Ki Kim Renault, Natalie Canavor, Aviday Shashani, and Sandy Jackson Cohen. Mike Turpin is our engineer, and I'm Grace Cavalieri. Thank you.